Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm delighted to have as our guest today David Butler, who is the Cahaba Riverkeeper for our precious resource, the Cahaba River. Thank you, David, for joining us. How are you?
Wonderful. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us.
So I read your story, and I've had, I think, Dr. Crawford on before, but many years ago. But since that time, there seems to have been an impetus, which you seem also to have spearheaded to a large degree, just from your love of preserving that ecological gem that we have right here in our palm of our hands that no one seems to even realize. Well, they do, some do, those people like you do, others that share your interests do, right here. And I think, for starters, why don't you tell us how you got so engaged in trying to preserve this resource?
Yeah, sure. So my story is really not unlike the story you just told. I mean, I was a recreational user of the Cahaba River. Really didn't know how unique and special it was. I was just somebody who enjoyed paddling and fishing, and got involved in doing canoe trips. And people started asking, more and more questions of, what's the water quality, what kind of fish, what kind of birds, and I didn't really know. And I started looking around trying to get some of those answers, and relatively easy to find a lot of information about the biodiversity in the Cahaba River, but not water quality and whether it was safe to swim. And so that's how I met Dr. Crawford. And really, my passion for the Cahaba was really ignited by Dr. Crawford. She had formed the Riverkeeper a little bit before we met, and I was really, really interested in getting engaged and, doing something to help on the river, and wanted to do volunteer work, and, wanted to do the kind of volunteer work that, was actually on the river. I wasn't real interested in, going to meetings and setting up tables of information. I wanted to kind of get my hands dirty and be outside. And at the time, organization was very, very small. And she just kind of made a commitment to me. She said, if you, think of something you want to do, I'll figure out how to help you pay for it. And from there, we started a annual water quality monitoring program, Swim Guide. We're about to start again this summer for our 9th year. And we'll go out to every recreational access point on the Cahaba, from Trustful all the way down to Bibb County, every Thursday, and collect water samples. And then we built a lab at our office, and we'll go back, incubate the bacteria samples. And then on Friday mornings, we publish the results for the public. So before you get out on the river on the weekend, you have information about where it's safe to swim and where you should be cautious. And from there, from the water quality monitoring program, we just really kind of grew into collecting all kinds of data about fish populations, microplastic pollution, all sorts of things. And so it's been really, really exciting and educational for me. And like I said, I think I was one of those people you were talking about. I never dreamed how wonderful the Cahaba is just by driving over bridges and seeing it below me.
Well, you mentioned two things that makes me want to ask you a question. I want to know a little bit more about Dr. Crawford. Mm-hmm. And a shorter question would be, when you publish this information, how do we, as the consumer viewer of this program, get to that information?
Yeah, so I'll start with that one first. So there's an app, the Swim Guide app, which connects you to people all over the country doing work like what we're doing, and so you can download the app, or we push out the information through social media and the news, text messages, through email alerts. So there's ways on our website that you can sign up for all those different services. You can choose to get all the results or just the results of the sites that you're interested in. And over the last 9 years, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people request that data every week. And so it's been really fulfilling to see how many people really wonder about water quality and are interested in knowing before they get in the river. And then, as far as Dr. Crawford, amazing lady. She had retired from the UAB School of Public Health, and she, many years ago, she bought a piece of property right off the Cahaba River and had raised her kids in the river and had watched it change over the time that she lived there. And so when she retired, she decided that she didn't want to just sit around and garden, and really took on a monumental task of creating a environmental advocacy organization in Alabama, and as a woman too. And so I was just blown away by her commitment to protect the river. And the first time we met, I knew that she was the kind of person I wanted to work for. And so from that time, forward, we have worked hand in hand and have had some really amazing success in educating people how unique and special the river is.
Well, with respect to the information that's gathered, all of that information can be accessed through the website CahabaRiverkeeper.org, right?
That's correct. Yep. So all the swim guide information gets posted every week on our website, which, as you said, is CahabaRiverkeeper.org. You can just click on the swim guide tab at the top, and it'll give you the results for that week. And you can also go back and look at historical results and see what it's been in previous weeks.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. I'd like to get into some things about what's threatening that resource right now when we come back. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm talking with David Butler, who happens to be a lawyer. I apologize for you having to carry that mantle around with you, but it's a good education. And I hope you're utilizing it to some degree in studying the regulatory masses of information you must have to deal with in dealing with things that you're dealing with respect to environmental problems. What kinds of problems are you seeing as you navigate the Cahaba River from a realistic standpoint? Recently, there's been some press about some development going on near or close to the river or on the river. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, I never would have imagined that the biggest threat to the Cahaba River is stormwater, and we have just historically done a very poor job of managing stormwater in a way that's not harmful to the river. And so we still in Alabama kind of lag behind other states, even in the Southeast, with the way that we permit development and the requirements for holding back stormwater. And so, traditionally the engineering approach was to, get the water away from, buildings and structures as quick as possible and push it into ditches, creeks, and then the river. And what we've seen over time is these huge, spikes in stormwater. So every time it rains, we just get an amazing amount of water really fast into the river, which tears up the banks, undercuts roads, pipeline, like sewer pipes and water pipes. And then, of course, as the bank fails, all that dirt flushes into the river and kind of suffocates everything that lives along the bottom. And so I never knew how bad this huge amount of dirt is for the river, but it really chokes the life out of the bottom of the river. And then what happens is the things that feed on what lives on the bottom of the river no longer have a source of food, and they have to move on to other places. And you have snails and mussels that can't move away from the pollution. So, when you dump a 6, 8, 10 inches of dirt on top of their habitat, they just don't deal with it very well. And so over this last year, especially, we've seen this catastrophic flooding that is, part the more extreme weather events and part our history of poor stormwater management.
Well, we've also had an incredible amount of rain
Mm-hmm.
in the last couple of years, sometimes as much as 3 feet over what's been historically referred to as normal. So I'm sure that has exasperated the problem. Uh, are there steps that are being taken to try to educate, particularly development, I suppose, along the river? And is there development along the river?
Oh, certainly. I mean, it's a prime, desirable location to build, and with the increase in the value of homes, it's made it more economically feasible to develop in places that were traditionally tough to build, just from a cost standpoint. And so we're seeing, more and more development closer and closer to the river. And important thing to remember about rivers is that not only do you have the main stem of the river, but all of the tributaries that feed the river. Development along those tributaries is just as and sometimes more harmful than development along the river. And so, we certainly do our best to try to educate, both developers themselves, staff at the municipalities in our watershed. But there's a lot of resistance to the kind of work that we do. Most times I find that people start out trying to prove me wrong, and it's really important to remember that these problems, these are not what David Butler thinks. I mean, these are documented problems that the EPA and ADEM, the Department of Environmental Management, have adopted a TMDL, which is a kind of a plan to mitigate some of the the harmful problems in rivers. And in the case of the Cahaba, that's for siltation or dirt, sediment. And so it's not something that these tree hugging crazy environmentalists dreamed up. I mean, it is a documented, well documented problem, and it's going to take kind of a really collaborative effort from all stakeholders to solve those problems.
Do you have cooperation and interaction with ADEM and the EPA proactively,
No,
or are they a little slow on the draw?
yeah, we do not have a great relationship with the enforcement arm at ADEM. They're just very, very reluctant to hold people accountable. And that's actually why I went to law school. Just you go out and see some of these problems, and they're so obvious and so blatant that it's mind-boggling to think that the state agency tasked with protecting our environment doesn't aggressively step up to stop those problems. And just being completely honest, I was so naive when I started in this world that I thought that I would be ADEM's biggest teammate. I thought I would go out and find problems that maybe they didn't have the resources to investigate all the time, and I could go document what those problems were, and then that they would solve them. And that's really the way that I thought it worked. And unfortunately, that's just not proven to be the case. And so you see a lot of riverkeeper organizations in Alabama stepping up and filing lawsuits and trying to hold people accountable. And that's entirely because the state refuses to do it.
We've just got about half a minute here, but
Mm-hmm.
are the lawsuits being responded to, and are we getting people's attention?
I think we're definitely getting people's attention. I mean, we've seen over the past several years for sure that, people are much more willing to sit down and talk with us, where in the past they just kind of ignored us and dared us to sue them. And so I do feel like that, the work that we're doing is being noticed. And I think, speaking as a lawyer, and you know this as well, it's very, very rare that you win in lawsuits, even when you win. I mean, sometimes they take 5, 7, 8, 10 years, countless hours of manpower, the financial resources. And so we have to be really careful about which of those battles we pick.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We've been talking about problems with enforcement of things that David thought he was helping by providing information to the authorities that are tasked with enforcing these things. Are we having problems currently with the Birmingham Waterworks Board and some things that are going on there? It seems like I read something about that.
Yeah, so we filed a lawsuit last year, to hold them to a settlement agreement that they signed with the Attorney General's office to permanently protect about 6,000 acres around Lake Purdy, which is the source of drinking water for large percentage of the people in Birmingham. And ratepayers had paid for that money for the purpose of protecting the Lake Purdy Little Cahaba watershed where our water comes from. And even after signing the settlement agreement, agreeing to do that, it took them 17 years before they finally recorded what they purported to be conservation easements. But unfortunately, those were not true conservation easements. They really didn't provide any permanent protection for the land, and would allow the Waterworks Board to sell that land for development if they wanted to. And we had attempted for 4 years or so to negotiate a compromise solution where the lands were permanently protected, and they the Waterworks Board kind of held up their end of the deal. And unfortunately, those efforts failed, and so we were forced to take it to court. Our case was dismissed in Jefferson County. We appealed to the Supreme Court, and they unanimously ruled in our favor and have sent it back to Jefferson County for further proceedings. And so, not sure when or if that case will go to trial, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is protect this really important land around our drinking water. It's a well-known fact that a forested buffer around these drinking water reservoirs provide a lot of filtration, help lower the cost of our drinking water, and at the end of the day, these conservation easements were not something that the environmental community asked for. This is the Waterworks Board and the Attorney General agreed on their own to do this, and so if you have a conservation easement on your property, you can't be the holder of the easement, and you have a third party that has some oversight about what happens on the land to prevent violations of the conservation easement, and that isn't the case with the situation that we have with the Waterworks Board. They have designated themselves both the owner of the land and the holder of the easement, and so there's no real oversight for what they do with that land.
So what are you asking them not to do? Or
we're asking them not to develop the land. We're asking them to keep it for the purpose that it was purchased with ratepayer money to protect our drinking water.
And that's what's not happening.
And that's what's not happening. There have been times in the past where they've sold some of the land, they have listed other parcels for sale. And so, we're not confident that if we didn't take this action, that more of that land wouldn't be developed.
As a ratepayer and a person who likes to enjoy the benefits of the Cahaba River, what can a citizen who's watching this program do to help that situation be better? What can we do?
Well, the biggest thing that people do to help me is watch the river. So we cover 1,900 square miles, and can't possibly be everywhere at once. And so I'm having people be aware of the water that runs through their property, or that they recreate around at parks and trails. If you see something, a fish kill or discolored water or something doesn't smell right, we strongly encourage you to let us know so we can get out and take a look. We can certainly get out there faster than the state agency will, and we do our absolute best to document the problem and then resolve it. Our work is funded by individual citizens, and so none of this would be possible if people didn't support what we're doing enough to write us a check. And then we use tons and tons of volunteer help. So we do a lot of different kinds of projects that require help from volunteers, and we just welcome this week, as a matter of fact, our group of college interns for the summer. So we'll have 12 people that'll be out helping us collect water samples and document, problems on the river. They do outreach. We have an education program that we teach kids how to sample, more information about water quality. And so really, anybody who loves the river has something to offer to help. And we strongly encourage you to reach out, visit our website at CahabaRiverkeeper.org and pick a way that you can get involved.
Essentially, if you see something, say something, is
That's
what
right.
you're saying.
That's right. And it's remarkable, some of the things that we have been made aware of by just a regular person making an observation, taking a picture, and asking us a question. So some of our most significant accomplishments have come from a citizen tip or complaint.
Well, I appreciate you being with us today. I hope we've enlightened some folks on what to pay attention to and look for. Keep up the good work. You're a rare breed, and we're fortunate to have you out there working for all of us. Thanks for being with us today, David.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Thanks for being with us. We will see you next Sunday.